Okay, so it is almost summer. We got about 4 months until summer. A lot of you guys are probably ending your bulking phases right now. You're finishing off your bulks, or you're just gearing up to do a cutting cycle or a fat loss phase, right? And honestly, from the DMs you guys send me and the questions you guys ask me all the time, I kind of came to the conclusion that a lot of you guys are struggling way more with fat loss than you are with building muscle, right? Because I feel like it's just like it's the harder approach, right? It's the harder phase, right? Because we have to. It's a lot fucking more mentally challenging to shed off a lot of fucking body fat, right? And from what you guys are telling me, it's not even so much about the PEDs. You guys are just lacking on the fundamentals of the fat loss in general, like the basic fundamentals of fat loss. And we'll talk about the PEDs too, of course. But this is essentially going to be the enhanced fat loss guide. So this is going to be part two of the PED cycle guide. The first part was the bulking cycle, and now this is going to be the other direction, the cutting cycle. So essentially this is going to be probably one of the most controversial videos I'm ever going to fucking make because a lot of this information is very, very contradicting to a lot of the information you guys have learned about fat loss over the years. And this is not information that's very commonly talked about. And this is what basically anybody with a high level physique is doing for their fat loss. So again, like these are the problems that I've kind of like concluded you guys are having the most issues with, and I've kind of summarized them into these points right here. So we're gonna talk about this first. So the main problems you guys are dealing with here with your fat loss is number one, you guys are taking loads of fucking gear and you're still not shredded. Your physique does not reflect the amount of gear you guys are taking. Okay. You guys are putting all this pharmacology in your body, and your fat loss is gonna, your fat loss phase will end, and you're still not really looking like you're on steroids. So you guys are also taking a lot of T3, Clen, fat burners, and you're still not really shredded. You take these things with the goal of burning a lot of fat, and again, your fat loss phase will end, and you're not really shredded. You guys are tanking your fucking calories. We're talking like going from 5,000 calories peak bulk, immediately going into like 2,000, and then like less and less. And you guys are doing this again with the intention with, okay, the less food I eat, the more fat I'm going to burn. But in reality, you guys will end your cutting phase and you're still not really shredded. You guys are tanking your fucking energy during your cut. So you guys have low energy, you're lethargic, you feel like fucking shit, you're putting yourself through all this hardship and you're still not really shredded. You guys are also losing a lot of strength during your diet. So, yes, some strength loss is going to happen when you're doing a cutting phase because it's going to happen. Eventually, you're going to get lean enough where, the calories you're eating are not going to support, maintaining the same level of strength you had when you're doing your bulk. Okay. But you guys are losing like too much strength and like too fucking quickly, which tells me you guys are losing muscle during that process because strength is a very good indicator of whether you're building or maintaining muscle mass. Okay. And then your cut's going to end and you're not really much leaner than when you started. You're lighter, but you're just more flat, you're stringy, and you're still like 15-16% body fat. And then after going all through this shit, you guys are gonna have a major fucking rebound because you're tired and you feel like fucking garbage and you're hungry. So now you're gonna be like, oh well, my fat loss phase is over. Now I'm gonna binge on all this shit, and then you just rebound, and then all your progress is lost, and then you just don't really make any progress in the long term. So, in summary, these are the main issues you guys are dealing with here. Okay. And this video is going to essentially provide a solution for everything I just pinpointed down here. So, first, let's go over some of the common fat loss mistakes you guys are doing in your approach. Okay. So, number one is you guys are following an if it fits your macros approach, or a lot of you guys are at least. So, essentially, that's eating whatever you want as long as you're in a calorie deficit. So, by definition of this approach, you can eat cookies, brownies, ice cream, whatever the fuck, and as long as you're still in a deficit, you're still going to burn fat, which doesn't make fucking sense. I'm going to get into this in a little bit too. But you guys are a lot of you guys are doing this approach, and you guys are relying on the steroids to burn the fat, And in reality, they don't really do a good job at that. So steroids do a very, very good job at building and maintaining muscle tissue. Okay. I would say they help with fat loss, maybe like 5%. Okay. And like a lot of you guys will start your cutting cycles and be like, oh, I'm going to take Winstrol to get dry and vascular. I'm going to take Masteron to get dry and Trend to look hard. And it's like, you're not doing the right approach. You're not doing this with the correct way of thinking. So the steroids, again, they're going to help you maintain and build muscle. The diet is what's going to drive your body composition. Okay. So you guys are tanking your calories way too fucking early. So like I said above, you guys are going from like your peak bulk calories of like 5,000 and tanking it all the way to 2,000. And then there's not really anywhere to go from there, right? You guys are incorporating way too much cardio too early into your diet. So again, you guys will tank your calories and you'll immediately throw in like an hour of cardio after your workout. And then you're also relying on the fat burners like Clen, T3. I've even heard DNP from a few people, ephedrine, caffeine stack, all those fat burners. And again, you're throwing them in way too early. So these three right here, the calories, the cardio, and the fat burners, you guys are throwing like the whole kitchen sink into your diet, into your cutting phase all at once, all from the fucking get-go, from day one. And again, there's not really much to go from there. Once you play all those fucking cards, you have no more cards to fucking deal with. So let's go over this first. I'm going to take a sip of water here because I've been talking a lot. There we go. So let's go over the most important component to fat loss, okay? So the most important component to lipolysis, fat loss, it's not calories. It's not the timing of the food. It's not the types of food. Well, the type of food does play a role in it, but it's not the calorie deficit or whatever the fuck you've been hearing. It's literally insulin. It's the hormone insulin. So it's your body's ability to manipulate this hormone and use it to our advantage, right? So let's go over this first, okay? So insulin is essentially your storage hormone. In very, very basic terms, it's your storage hormone. So if insulin levels are high, you store, okay? So you store fat, you store intramuscular carbohydrates and glycogen. You build muscle. You store intracellular electrolytes like salt and potassium, all that kind of stuff. And basically, if your insulin levels are high, you will drive whatever nutrients are into the bloodstream into cells. Okay. So if your insulin levels are low, you do not store. And if you're not in storage mode, you are more likely to free whatever stored energy is in your body and use that as energy to burn it. So by definition, lipolysis can only happen when insulin levels are low. Okay, this is a very, very important concept. So if your insulin levels are chronically high, your fat cells are locked. Like the fucking key has been thrown away and you're never getting the fucking key back until you control the insulin. So if your fat cells are locked because the insulin levels are high, they cannot be burned for energy. Okay? So what we need in a proper diet is this concept called metabolic flexibility. It's our body's ability to basically teach it. We have to teach our body to use glucose when we need it for energy and to use fat when we need it for energy. Okay? And again, calories are not the end all be all of fat loss. There's so much more that goes into it. Like, yes, the calories in, calories out, whatever, it's important to some extent, but there's like a million different other variables that play a role in fat loss. Okay. It's not just the calories. We cannot be so fixated on this mindset. So with that being said about insulin, let's now go into why if it fits your macros is bullshit. So before I get into the whole if it fits your macros spiel, so we have to understand like, whatever apps like you guys are using, like MyFitnessPal or like fucking Cal AI, which all the fucking influencers are promoting nowadays, they don't know your true metabolic needs. Okay. They don't know your body's true needs. So it could say on paper, yes, you need X amount of calories to be in a calorie deficit and burn fat, but it does not know your body's like individual metabolism. It does not know if you're like, an endomorph, an ectomorph. It does not know how active you are throughout the day. It does not know your body's individual response to carbohydrates and fats. There's so many different variables that go into it. So just because on paper an app says you're in a calorie deficit does not actually mean you're in a true calorie deficit, right? So let's understand that first, right? So like I said before, if it fits your macros is essentially the concept where you can fit whatever the fuck you want into your diet. So cookies, brownies, ice cream, fucking donuts, whatever. And as long as you're in a calorie deficit, you can essentially burn fat, right? And get lean and jacked and whatever. Now, the the main issue with this is, like I said before, right? So if your insulin levels are high, your fat cells are locked and cannot be used for energy. So with all these refined carbohydrates you guys are fitting into your diet because you're following this stupid fucking approach, the refined carbohydrates, the sugars, all that stuff you're fitting in to your calorie deficit, they're literally causing chronically high insulin levels because these foods basically stimulate your pancreas to constantly produce insulin to remove the glucose, the sugar, out of your blood and into cells, right? So if your insulin levels are high, your fat cells are locked. Okay, you have these foods that are causing you to be a chronic fucking insulin secretor, and you're in this calorie deficit on paper. But where's that deficit coming from? Because we can't use the fat for energy, right? Because the insulin levels are high and the fat cells are locked. So your calorie deficit will not cause the fat cells to be burned for energy. So what does that mean? Where's the deficit coming from? It's going to come from literally like your body's like fucking like energy, like how you feel on a day-to-day basis. So your energy levels are going to go down. You're going to be very lethargic when you go into a deficit if you have chronically high insulin levels. Your body temperature is going to go down. You're going to get weaker. You're going to feel like shit because again, we don't have the fat to use for energy. It has to come from other places because our insulin levels are too fucking high. So you might lose some weight in this process, but you'll just be fatter, flatter, and smaller because essentially your body doesn't know how to use fat for energy. So we're basically like we're a glucose burner at that point, right? So you're gonna burn all of your body's glucose, carbohydrates in the muscle, so you're gonna go flat. Now all the carbohydrates in the muscle are gone, but we can't use the fat for energy because our insulin levels are high. So now we're just fat, flat, and small, and we feel like shit, right? So basically no serious bodybuilders are ever going to follow this approach, right? No one with a high level physique follows this approach. No competitors follow this approach when they're doing their contest preps. That's why Greg Doucette's fucking cookbook is retarded. Like it's like you're never gonna get in the shape that you want. Like we're talking seriously low body fat percentages following this stupid fucking approach. Okay, it's just not gonna work. It physically cannot work. So that was my rant about if it fits your macros. And hopefully, if you guys just want to fucking stop the video there, that would probably help like half of you right there, just throwing out that fucking approach. So let's go into the proper fat loss diet, okay? So we know if it's your macros, doesn't work. So now we're going to do things correctly. So basically, we want to be having just about 4 to 5 meals a day. And this is staple. I would say 4 to 5 is like the low end. For like a serious bodybuilder, we probably want to go like 6 or 7, but minimum 4 to 5. Okay. And this is staple. Staple meaning we're doing 4 to 5 meals in a cutting phase and also a bulking phase. So that does not change. That's constant throughout the year. So again, we need this metabolic flexibility. So we need fat loss time in the day where we're not producing a whole lot of insulin, and we need storage time in the day where we are producing insulin and basically, in basic terms, storing things. So this is essentially going to dictate, what we have during the pre, intra, and post workout window. So that's our storage time in the day. Okay, so we want protein and carb meals in that pre, intra, post workout window to essentially supply our muscle, with some glucose, some glycogen, so we have energy to perform during that workout and continue to get stronger. Okay, even in the dieting phase, we want this to happen because we want to maintain as much strength as possible, and we want to have good workout performance and some level of muscle fullness when we're dieting. Okay, so we need that time during the day where we are storing. Okay, so at that time, you're not really burning so much fat. You're going to a glucose metabolism. So you're using that energy to basically perform. Now the rest of the day, we don't really need the the carbohydrates on board because we're not performing, we're not working out. So for the rest of the day, we're just going to have, protein fats or protein vegetables. And again, we have this metabolic flexibility now. So now our body knows how to use that fat for energy. So now we don't have, these carbohydrates producing a lot of insulin. So our body's going to have low levels of insulin. Now we can go into more of a fat burning state throughout the rest of the day, right? So it's not just black and white where we have, we're in a calorie deficit all the fucking time. There's some times in the day where we're in a surplus or storage mode, and sometimes the day where we're in a deficit when we're in, burning mode, when energy using mode. Okay. And going back to the protein, so 300 to 500 grams per day. If you're taking gear, the whole point of your gear is to essentially retain the dietary protein. So the low end, we should be having about 300 grams. And if you're a bigger guy, over 250 pounds, 500 grams easily. And our body can utilize that because we have the hormones in our system to retain the dietary proteins. So let's get into an example fat loss diet. I'm just going to take another sip of water here. Oh, my mouth gets so fucking dry when I'm making these videos. I just talk my fucking ass off. Okay. So meal one. So let's just preface this first. So let's say we're working out, let's say like midday, okay, like 1 or 2 o'clock. So we're gonna have meal one, which is essentially going to be just a protein fat meal. We don't need the carbohydrates on board. We're not working out until later. Now we're getting close to our pre-workout time. So in about 1 to 2 hours, we're gonna be training. So we want a protein and carb meal. So a protein source with very, very minimal fat. So something like chicken breast, fish, something like that. Want some white rice for the carbohydrates to, get some energy in our muscle to train. And then maybe some fruit. And then intra workout, we're having some, a very, very fast digesting form of a carbohydrate. So that could be, dextrose is a great option. So it's going to spike your insulin. So when we're training, our muscles are the most insulin sensitive. So we can have the dextrose essentially spike our insulin when we're training and drive whatever nutrition is in our bloodstream into the cells that are the most insulin sensitive, which are our muscle cells when we're training, because we're breaking them down. So it makes sense. We have the dextrose and maybe some EAAs on board. And then our post-workout meal, whey protein and then another fast digesting carb. That could be more dextrose. That could be like gummy bears. That could be a piece of fruit. But again, we want the insulin on board, when we're in that post-workout window. Again, drive the nutrients into, from the bloodstream into the muscle cell. And then again, we're going to have another chicken breast and white rice meal to replenish the glycogen stores after we're done training. And then the rest of the day, we don't need carbohydrates. So we're going to go back into fat burning mode. So basically, we just have steak and vegetables, salmon, vegetables, just protein, fats, and vegetables. So we don't need the glucose. So that's the example fat loss diet. So now we established that, basically the fundamentals, this is, I would say, the most important component to the fat loss right here is the diet. Now we're going to go into the cycle design for cutting. So I'm going to take another sip of water here. Now let's get into this. So basically, a lot of people have the misconception where, they don't want to run high testosterone when they're dieting because they think it holds a lot of water. Now, when you're lean and you're not eating a lot of carbohydrates, you're not going to hold water regardless of what you take. You can literally take DECA and D-ball, and if you're like 8% body fat, you're not going to hold a lot of water. You're just going to look full and vascular. So same concept with testosterone. So anywhere from 500 milligrams to 1500 milligrams would be a good dose to cut on. If you're a bigger guy, I'd probably want to go above a gram. For me personally, I like 750. Cutting or bulking, I like 750. So then we want to pick another anabolic, probably one that doesn't convert to a whole lot of estrogen because, yes, you're not going to hold a lot of water regardless of what you take if you're lean and not eating carbohydrates. But, we want to mitigate as much water retention as possible because it is going to kind of blur the definition, when we're dieting. So I like Primobolan personally, but you can also go with Masteron. You can go with Equipoise. You can go with a combination of 2 or 3 of those. And again, about the same dose of your testosterone, 500 milligrams to 1500 milligrams. And then we also want some really strong nutrient partitioners on board. So by nutrient partitioners, we want compounds that do a very good job at, creating muscle fullness and driving carbohydrates into the muscle cell. So Winstrol does a very good job at this. We could run that at 50 to 100 milligrams. Anadrol does a good job at this, 50 to 100 milligrams, even 150 for Anadrol. I would say that's a good dose. Superdrol does a very, very good job at this. 20 to 50 milligrams for Superdrol. It's very powerful, but also extremely toxic. So you don't want to run it for a super long time. I would say that would be a good one to throw right at the end of your diet when you're about to finish it off. And then Trenbolone, anywhere from 200 to 500 milligrams. I would say Tren and Superdrol do the best job in nutrient partitioning out of all these compounds right here. And you could run Tren for the whole diet, the whole 16-week diet if you wanted to. And again, you don't want the Tren to be like the staple anabolic of your cycle. You just want it to be like the cherry on top, right? So you're doing mostly the tests and the other anabolic right here, and then you're throwing these in again as kind of like the cherry on top. So to break past the strength plateau, to peak your look at the end of your diet when you're really, really lean, all that stuff. Because again, you are going to run to some strength loss when you're dieting, and these compounds do a very good job at kicking in very quickly. So you're going to prevent any strength loss and even gain some strength when you're dieting with these. So clenbuterol, anywhere from 20 micrograms to 100 micrograms in the morning. So clenbuterol in any kind of fat burner works the absolute best when you take it on a fasted state and then you go move. So that could be, taking it on a completely empty stomach, maybe some water or something like that, and then go do your fasted cardio. Go walk in the treadmill, go do your Stairmaster, elliptical, whatever it might be, walk the fucking dog. And it works the best doing it like that. And then you have your first meal after you're done with that fasted cardio. So if you can afford it, pharmacy grade growth hormone, anywhere from 4 to 6 IUs. And a good fat loss splitting of the growth hormone is going to be morning. So morning with your fasted cardio. So you're going to take your clen, take, maybe half the growth hormone dose, because it has a very good fat loss effect, a very good lipolysis effect when you use it in that fasted state. And then before bed, you take the other half for basically recovery. And you can even split it off into 3 ways. Take it once in the morning, once pre-workout for some fullness and performance effect during the workout, and then again before bed for recovery. And then if you're taking growth hormone, some T4 thyroxine would be really good to throw in with that. It has some synergy with growth hormone. It's just good to open up all these pathways. And 100 to 200 micrograms in the morning. And then metformin if you need it. So a lot of guys do just like naturally, they don't have a high insulin sensitivity. And they're kind of like their body is made to store, if that makes sense. That'd be like, if we're talking like ectomorph, mesomorph, and endomorph, endomorphs would be like more likely to not have a high insulin sensitivity. So this can definitely help just, promote your insulin sensitivity and make your fat loss process a lot easier if you have trouble with it. So 1,000 to 200 milligrams or 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams, again, if you need it. Okay. So now we're going to get into a couple scenarios of dieting, of, what you guys are doing. So before I get into this, again, I'm just going to take another sip of water, and I'm going to go over these scenarios. Okay. So I'd like to almost say that like fat loss is like playing a game of cards. So you have basically 3 cards on board, okay? You have your nutrition, so you have your calorie deficit, you have your cardio, and then you have your fat burners. So that's Clen, T3, EC stack. Actually, I completely did not include DNP on this. I think DNP is fucking stupid. So if you guys are using DNP, just I would highly not recommend that. So we have these 3 variables we can play with, okay? And essentially, if we play all of our cards at once during our fat loss phase, like we throw everything in from fucking day one, low calorie deficit, high cardio, and a shit ton of fat burners, we now have no more cards to play with, and there's nowhere to go from there. So you're gonna get a big drop, and then you're gonna plateau, and you're gonna stagnate, and there's nowhere to go. So let's get into essentially the improper fat loss approach here. So this is you guys when you just finish your bulk. So let's say you finish your bulk at about 4,500 calories, and you weigh about, let's say, 220 pounds, arbitrary number. So you're immediately going to start your cycle, which is, there's no problem with this, but you're going to immediately start your cycle. So let's say 1,000 tests, it's a good dose of tests right there. 500 mgs of tren, it's a decent dose of tren, maybe 500 milligrams of mast, and then 50 milligrams of winstrol. Okay. So again, there's not really anything wrong with this cycle, but it's like you're throwing the tren and the winstrol in all at once, as opposed to just, using the main anabolics at first, like the test and the mast, and then throwing in the trend and the winstrol as the diet gets deeper. But instead, you guys are throwing everything in at once. So you guys will immediately drop your calories down to 2,000. So that's a 2,500 calorie drop right there. So that's like you're basically going from, like 0 to 100. You're immediately throwing in fat burners like Clen and T3, like 100 micrograms. Like you guys are throwing in heavy fat burners in like day one of your fucking cut. And then you're immediately incorporating 1 hour of cardio daily. So like I said before, you guys just basically played all your fucking cards at once, and there's no more cards to play with here. So 1 month later, 1 month goes by. You lost some fat here. Okay. You definitely lost some fat, but your energy levels are pretty down. And, you lost some strength because you tanked your calories quite a bit. And now let's say you lost about 10 pounds in a month. So decent progress so far. But now it's like, okay, well, you have to kick on your fat loss again, and you already dropped your calories a shit ton. Now you have to drop your calories even more. So you'll drop your calories to, like, let's say 1,500. And then another month goes by. And yeah, you lost slightly more fat. But now your energy levels are fucking shot because you're basically eating the same amount of calories as a fucking bikini competitor that's, an 120-pound female. You lost a shit ton of strength, and now you're losing muscle. Because like I said before, your strength is going to be a big indicator of whether you're maintaining your muscle during your diet or not. And you're flat, you're stringy, but you're still kind of fat. And now your metabolism is fucking tanked because you did everything at once over here, and there's nowhere to fucking go. So keep in mind, the more you diet down into a deficit, the slower your metabolism is going to get because your body's going to start to catch up. It's going to start to adapt because we're like, holy fuck, like we're burning so much, we have to like slow shit down so we don't burn anymore and we can retain whatever's on our fucking body for survival. So keep that in mind. Like the more you fucking tank your calories, the slower your metabolism is going to get. So the result is another unsuccessful diet for the fucking fifth year in a row. You're not lean despite the calories, low calories, high cardio, and on a shit ton of fat burners. And then you give up, go back into surplus, and not a lot of progress is made. See, now he's fucking sad because he's fucking he didn't get shredded for the fifth year in a row. So now we're gonna do shit the right way, okay? So we're gonna go over here. So same scenario. This is the correct fat loss approach. Same scenario, same starting scenario. Just finished the bulk, so 4,500 calories. This guy is, 220 pounds. And this is what he's going to do differently. This is what he's going to do correctly. So instead of throwing every single fucking card in at once, the high cardio, the low calories, the shit ton of fat burners, he's just going to play one card at once. So he's going to play one variable at a time. So for example, he's going to milk out as much fat loss as he can, just playing that one variable. And then he's going to add in another card. Okay. So let's take an example. So he starts at 4,500 calories and he drops it to 4,000. So, about a 500 calorie drop. He's going to milk out as much fat loss as he possibly can out of that 500 calorie drop. Now his fat loss is plateaued. Okay. Now he's going to play another card. He's going to add in 20 minutes of cardio. Okay. Now he kicked on fat loss again and his fat is going down into lower numbers now. Okay. Then he plateaued again. Now he's going to throw in 20 micrograms of Clen. Now his fat loss kicked on again. So he has room to play with, right? So he's not just throwing everything in at once and plateauing and stagnating forever because there's nowhere to go. Now there's plenty of room to just make those small little adjustments down. And again, small just, titrations down in food, up in cardio, up in fat burners until he's at the point where he wants to be. So he's going to structure his energy sources when needed to gain metabolic flexibility. Just like we mentioned in the diet example above, right? So he's having carbs when he needs it, so he can teach his body to use glucose when he needs it for energy for the workout. And then the rest of the day, he's not really having any carbohydrates. Insulin levels are low. Fat cells are readily available to be used for energy. And then for that rest of the day, he's basically burning fat. Again, metabolic flexibility. So he begins his cycle with the main anabolics. So just test primo, mast, maybe a little bit of trend. Nothing wrong with that. And then he'll add in the orals when the strength declines to push past the strength plateaus, and then at the end of the diet when he's really lean to peak his look, right? Because all these orals have a really good cosmetic effect. So if you're like 10% body fat, 8% body fat, you throw in 100 mgs of Winstrol, your physique is going to look fucking insane just from that cosmetic effect. But you don't have fat covering your muscles, so you can actually see what's going on. And instead of relying on the fat burners and steroids to burn the fat, he relied on the diet. So he structured his diet properly, and he made those small titrations down and structured the timing of his carbohydrates properly. So he was able to burn all the fat. And then 16 weeks, 4 months go by, and the result is, his calories are still somewhat high. So they're definitely over 2,000. So they're not tanked into the fucking ground. So I mean, they're already gonna have to get somewhat low, at a certain point to get lean, but they're still relatively high. He has decent energy. We're not talking about getting like contest fucking lean shredded here. We're talking about maybe like 8, 6, 8, 10% body fat, right? So he still has some decent energy going on. Now he has a low level body fat, and he retained basically all of his muscle tissue and his strength. Okay. So keep in mind about the strength retention when we're dieting. So let's say, for example, we're squatting 405 for 3 sets of 10, and we're benching 315 for 3 sets of 10, and we're deadlifting 500 for 3 sets of 10. Okay, we want to maintain a ballpark of 1 or 2 reps more or less of those strength numbers throughout our entire dieting process, right? Or maybe within 20 pounds or something like that. If our strength is going too far down, we can pretty much assume we're losing muscle and something has to be changed. So if you're maintaining that strength or even gaining strength during that diet, that's the best scenario to be in right there. So I believe that covers everything here. So this is a lot of information here, a lot of valuable information, and a lot of controversial information, because a lot of you guys think it's just about the calories. Like, no, it's about insulin, it's about metabolic flexibility, and the calories are definitely a big component, but they're not the end all be all, right? So if you guys are doing any of these fat loss mistakes here, you guys are struggling with any of these problems here, I genuinely hope this video helped you guys out. And again, this is not information you hear quite a bit. So I really hope you guys can, use this information and just take something home, implement something, and just try it out. And hopefully this is the summer that you guys actually start to get fucking shredded and look like you're truly taking the PEDs that you're putting in your fucking body. Appreciate you guys watching this, and I will definitely be making more of these videos.